Okay, so Victoria Beckham is reportedly absolutely falling apart right now, like completely in bits, after her own son just went scorched earth on Instagram. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say this might be the messiest celebrity family implosion we've seen in years. Brooklyn Beckham just posted the most insane tell-all about his parents. And guys, when I tell you the allegations he's making, I mean we're talking hijacked wedding dances, bribes, manipulation, the works. And now sources are saying Victoria is devastated. So buckle up because we're about to get into all of it. And trust me, you're gonna wanna hear every single detail of this absolute chaos. So let's just dive right in because there is so much to unpack here. For anyone who's been living under a rock, there have been rumors for literally years now that something was off between Brooklyn Beckham and his famous parents, David and Victoria Beckham. Like, we're talking about one of the most iconic celebrity families in Britain, right? David Beckham, legendary footballer, Victoria Beckham, Spice Girl turned fashion mogul. They've built this entire empire around their perfect family image. But behind the scenes, apparently it's been an absolute nightmare. And Brooklyn just confirmed everything, and then some. So here's what happened. Just recently, Brooklyn took to his Instagram stories and posted this absolutely nuclear statement. And I'm talking multiple slides, detailed allegations, the whole 9 yards. He starts off by saying he's been silent for years and has tried to keep everything private, which honestly, he has. Like, we've all seen the rumors swirling around, but he's never really said anything publicly until now. But then he drops this bomb. He says his parents and their team have continued to go to the press, leaving him with no choice but to speak for himself and tell the truth. And right there, that's already tea, because he's basically saying his own parents have been planting stories about him in the media. Like, imagine your own mom and dad using PR campaigns against you. That's wild. Then he says something that I think is really important. He goes, "I do not want to reconcile with my family. I'm not being controlled. I'm standing up for myself for the first time in my life." And that right there tells you everything about the narrative that's been going around. Because if you remember, a lot of the tabloid stories have been painting Nicola Peltz, his wife, as this controlling figure who came in and ruined the perfect Beckham family dynamic. But Brooklyn is saying straight up, that's not what happened at all. Now this is where it gets absolutely crazy. Brooklyn starts getting into specific incidents, and honestly, some of this stuff is so shocking I had to read it twice to make sure I was understanding it correctly. First up, the wedding dress situation. So we all remember Brooklyn married Nicola Peltz back in 2022. Massive wedding, super lavish, all that. At the time, there were rumors that Nicola refused to wear a Victoria Beckham wedding dress, and that's supposedly where this whole feud started. But Brooklyn is now saying that's completely false. He claims Victoria canceled making Nicola's dress at the 11th hour, despite how excited Nicola was to wear her design. Like, imagine planning your dream wedding. You're gonna wear a custom dress made by your mother-in-law, who's a literal fashion designer, and then weeks before the wedding, she just pulls out. That forced Nicola to urgently find a new dress, which ended up being that custom Valentino she wore. But wait, it gets worse. Brooklyn then reveals that weeks before the wedding, his parents repeatedly pressured him and tried to bribe him into signing away the rights to his own name, like his actual name, Brooklyn Beckham. And this wasn't just about him. This would have affected his wife and their future children. He says they were adamant about getting him to sign before the wedding date because that's when the terms of the deal would be initiated. And here's the kicker. He says his holdout affected their payday and they've never treated him the same since. Guys, let that sink in for a second. He's saying his parents tried to get him to sign away his name for money. And when he refused, they basically turned on him. That is insane. But honestly, nothing could have prepared me for what he said next. This is the part that absolutely broke the internet. Brooklyn claims that his mom hijacked his first dance with his wife at the wedding. Like, I'm not even kidding. Read this with me. He says the first dance had been planned weeks in advance to a romantic love song between him and Nicola. In front of 500 wedding guests, Mark Anthony, who was performing at the wedding, called Brooklyn to the stage. But instead of it being the romantic dance with his new wife that was scheduled, Victoria was waiting there to dance with him instead. And then, and I quote, "She danced very inappropriately on me in front of everyone. I've never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my entire life." Like, what? Your own mother hijacks your first dance with your wife and then dances inappropriately on you in front of 500 people at your wedding? And apparently there were reports at the time that Nicola was seen crying during this part of the wedding. And now we know why. That is absolutely heartbreaking and so wildly inappropriate, I don't even know where to start. Brooklyn says that's actually why they renewed their vows later, because they wanted to create new memories of their wedding day that brought them joy and happiness instead of anxiety and embarrassment. Like, imagine your wedding day being so traumatic that you have to redo it just to have good memories. That's devastating. So the wedding stuff alone would be enough drama for a lifetime. But Brooklyn keeps going. He says that the night before the wedding, members of his family told him that Nicola was not blood and not family. Like the night before you're about to marry the love of your life, your family's telling you she's not really going to be part of the family? How cruel is that? He also mentions that Victoria called him evil because he and Nicola chose to include their nannies at their table since they didn't have their husbands with them. Like he got called evil for being thoughtful and including the women who raised him. Make that make sense. Then he talks about how since he started standing up for himself, he's received endless attacks from his parents, both privately and publicly. And get this, he says even his brothers were sent to attack him on social media before they ultimately blocked him out of nowhere last summer. And we actually heard about this when it happened. Cruz Beckham had posted something about how his parents woke up blocked, but Brooklyn is saying they blocked him first. One of the most telling parts of Brooklyn's statement is when he talks about how his family operates. He says his family values public promotion and endorsements above all else. Brand Beckham comes first, he writes. He says family love is decided by how much you post on social media, or how quickly you drop everything to show up and pose for a family photo op. And honestly, that tracks when you think about it. The Beckhams have always been very strategic about their public image. Every birthday post, every family photo, everything is curated and perfect. But Brooklyn is saying behind that perfect facade, there's nothing real. He says they've gone out of their way for years to show up at every fashion show, every party, every press activity to show their perfect family. But when his wife asked Victoria for support to save displaced dogs during the LA fires, Victoria refused. Like, let that contrast sit with you for a second. We'll show up for a photo op any day of the week, but won't help save dogs during a natural disaster? That says a lot about priorities. Brooklyn also reveals some heartbreaking attempts at reconciliation that were completely rejected. He says they traveled to London for David's birthday and were rejected for a week as they waited in their hotel room trying to plan quality time with him. David refused all their attempts unless it was at his big birthday party with 100 guests and cameras everywhere. And when David finally agreed to see Brooklyn alone, it was under the condition that Nicola wasn't invited. Brooklyn calls it a slap in the face. Then, when his family traveled to LA, they refused to see him at all. Like his own parents were in his city and wouldn't even meet up with him. That's next level cold. He also mentions that Victoria has repeatedly invited women from Brooklyn's past into their lives in ways that were clearly intended to make both him and Nicola uncomfortable. Like, imagine your mother-in-law constantly bringing your husband's exes around. That's so toxic and manipulative. But here's what I think is the most powerful part of everything Brooklyn said. He addresses the narrative that Nicola controls him head on. He says, "The narrative that my wife controls me is completely backwards. I have been controlled by my parents for most of my life. I grew up with overwhelming anxiety. For the first time in my life, since stepping away from my family, that anxiety has disappeared." Guys, that hit me hard. He's saying he grew up with overwhelming anxiety because of his family, and it's only gone away since he cut contact with them. That speaks volumes about how toxic that environment must have been for him. He says he wakes up every morning grateful for the life he chose and has found peace and relief. All he and Nicola want is peace, privacy, and happiness. They don't want a life shaped by image, press, or manipulation. And honestly, can you blame them after everything he's described? So now let's talk about how Victoria is handling all of this. Because according to sources, she is absolutely not okay. Reports are coming out saying Victoria Beckham is in bits after Brooklyn's posts, like completely devastated and falling apart. And look, I can understand that to a degree. Having your son publicly air out family drama like this, making these kinds of allegations, that's gotta hurt. But at the same time, Brooklyn made it pretty clear that he tried to keep this private for years. He says he only went public because his parents and their team kept going to the press with their version of events. So far, Victoria hasn't made any public statement addressing Brooklyn's allegations. Her Instagram has been pretty quiet, though sources say she's been deleting old posts with Brooklyn and has made her comment sections more restricted. Classic damage control mode. David hasn't said anything publicly either, but insiders claim the family feels blindsided and that Brooklyn's claims are one-sided and deeply hurtful. But notice, they're not actually denying any of the specific allegations. They're just saying it's one-sided, which makes you wonder what their side of the story would even be. Here's the thing that really gets me about all of this. This isn't just celebrity drama or family squabbles. What Brooklyn is describing sounds like a pattern of control, manipulation, and emotional abuse. He talks about being controlled his entire life, about overwhelming anxiety, about his family prioritizing their brand and public image over his actual well-being and happiness. And I think a lot of people are relating to this on a really deep level, because how many of us have dealt with family members who are toxic, who manipulate situations, who prioritize appearances over actual relationships? who make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. Brooklyn's story is resonating because it's not just about famous people. It's about the universal experience of trying to break free from family dysfunction. The fact that he explicitly says he doesn't want to reconcile, that he's found peace since stepping away, that's powerful. That's him choosing himself and his own mental health in his marriage over maintaining a facade. And honestly, good for him. Look, we don't know everything that's happened behind closed doors. Brooklyn has given his version of events, and maybe someday we'll hear more from the other side. But what we do know is that this is clearly a deeply fractured family situation, and Brooklyn felt strongly enough about it to go public with some really serious allegations. Whether Victoria is in bits or not, the reality is that these are the consequences of whatever's been happening in that family. Brooklyn tried to handle it privately, and according to him, his parents kept using the media against him. So he used the media right back to tell his truth. I think the saddest part of all of this is that it didn't have to be this way. This is a family that has everything: money, fame, success, and yet they can't seem to find peace with each other. And now it's all playing out in the most public way possible. What do you guys think about all this? Do you believe Brooklyn's allegations? Do you think Victoria and David will respond? And do you think there's any chance this family reconciles? Or is this permanently broken? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Anyway, this concludes today's video. Be sure to subscribe to LoafTube for future celebrity videos, and turn on that post notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Until then, see you in the next one.